Coming up next is a session with Ashmita Sethi, President and Country Head at Pratt & Whitney. With over 2 decades of experience in the defense and commercial aerospace industry, in leadership positions, delivering strategic growth and results, Ashmita's expertise spans across business development, operations, supply chain, corporate and public affairs, communications, and issues management. She was previously at Boeing India as the head of communications and corporate affairs, and prior to that, she was senior director of corporate affairs at Rolls-Royce. Before she comes up on stage, I will invite Nitin Mantri, Regional Executive Managing Director for APAC at WE Communications and Group CEO at Avian WE, to come up on stage for a short presentation, as Avian WE is curating the session. Avian WE publishes an annual Brands in Motion report which helps companies navigate the ever-changing markets and reach audiences anywhere and on any channel. And hence, this session today is also titled Brands in Motion. Over to you, Nitin.
Okay, thank you, and thank you to the Spectra team for organizing this, and welcome to all of you. My name is Nitin Mantri, and I'm going to talk about It's Personal, the New Rules of Corporate Reputation. Okay, so the onslaught of these emerging and enduring existential threats is putting a lot of pressure on brands to figure out what is the solution. But many brands remain focused solely on the bigger picture, longer-term commitment, when most people's anxiety is urgent, it's personal, it's now. The gap between what people say they need to hear and what companies talk about is evidence of this rapidly shifting communications world, one that brands need a new rule book to navigate through. Now in its 6th year, we've surveyed nearly 15,000 people in 7 markets around the globe to explore how stakeholder expectations of the brands and employers in their life are shifting as anxiety ratchets upward. The data shows that aspirations for social justice, DEI, gender equality, collective issues that rose to prominence over the past 6 years are actually holding steady. But bread and butter concerns have leapfrogged to the top of the list. Cost of living, sustainability, employee welfare, and AI are creating high anxiety across all markets and demographics as more people put their immediate needs first. Through this turbulence, consumers also continue to look to brands alongside the government and media to bring what we call social stability. And in such a volatile environment, how brands manage their corporate reputation can make or break a company. Traditional approaches to communication and years-old corporate reputation strategies must evolve. People say that brands don't get it right, are tone deaf, that companies need to be in tune with immediate needs and concerns, or they risk losing customers and employees. Brands that pivot, though, will see long-lasting positive impact on their corporate reputation and business success. Therefore, the future of comms is now, and brands must adapt. You may be wondering, what did our research find is actually creating this new reputation paradigm? So we're going to start with number 1. First, we're seeing a huge surge in skepticism that brands are actually delivering on their existing commitments. In fact, our new data shows that fewer than half of brands globally are perceived as delivering on their commitments. Some markets like India are slightly more optimistic, believing a little more than half of brands are doing so. Further, the number of respondents that we categorize as purpose cynics actually increased by 3 percentage points from the previous year, which was quite interesting. This group actually believes it's not the role of brands to comment or act on societal issues at all. And many suspect that brands that have a point of view or act on societal issues are doing so just to sell us things, purpose washing. This has also increased by 4 percentage points globally from 2022. In India, it's worth noting that the percentage of purpose patrons, those who strongly support brands speaking up and acting on societal issues, has also increased from previous years. More of this segment exists here in India than regionally or even globally, which was quite an interesting find. And brands can tap into this growing belief locally to fight rising skepticism in general. How else can brands fight the surge in skepticism from every kind of stakeholder? This presents a significant challenge, but the data shows a path forward. More than half more than half of respondents said they want to hear more from brands during times of uncertainty. And 4 in 5 Indian respondents agreed that brands should be transparent in communicating to the public about what they do in response to current and emerging issues in society. It is no longer enough to operate ethically and responsibly to perform well and take purpose-led action. Brands must embrace what we call greater transparency than we've ever seen before in the form of hard data, employee testimonials, leadership admission of shortcomings, and much more. Another shift creating new rules of corporate reputation is what's been dubbed as the glass door effect. It used to be taboo to share details about things like pay and benefits beyond tight employer-to-employee relationships. But now 92% globally, jumping to 99% in India, believe how you treat employees is an essential part of your corporate character. Social media, crowdsourced rating sites, and shift in cultural norms about work have largely driven this change, creating what we call the Glassdoor effect. Elements of an organization like employee experience and satisfaction rates, benefits, and support are no longer for internal use only. These factors now influence the perception of your consumers, partners, and stakeholders too. Meanwhile, they of course continue to play a key role for existing and prospective employees. And finally, social issues still matter. Luckily, this is an area where brands, particularly in India, are after more of a focus on sustainability, are making big and tangible strides in speaking up and actively addressing. Even as consumers are calling on companies in 2023 to speak out more about issues such as cost of living or the climate crisis, they still want to keep talking about societal issues like DEI. Yes, people are holding companies to a much, much more higher and growing list of standards, so it's not just about DEI anymore. Given concerns around areas such as social justice have remained constant in recent years, we must not diminish our commitments in these areas even when issues that speak to personal survival remain top of mind. So what can brands do to navigate these pressures of surging skepticism, the Glassdoor effect, and the social impact stalemate? The answer lies right here in our data, which I'm going to share with you. We've uncovered four new rules brands must embrace in this year or risk an enduring hit to your reputation for years to come. The first rule is prioritizing the personal and immediate concerns of your people, notably cost of living and sustainability. This doesn't mean stopping support for issues that align with your values, but brands must address their existential dread that many feel about an unaffordable world on fire. Don't just make it real, make it personal. For example, this year, Indian consumers identify income or employment opportunity inequality as a top societal issues that brands must address to be considered operating with strong values or purpose. These issues have shifted higher in priority to the previous year. Indian consumers were also significantly more likely to say it's unacceptable for an organization to delay environmental commitments if an economic recession hits. About 40% of Indian respondents say brands are not talking enough about what they're doing to address issues like inflation. So cost of living is becoming a major issue. The second rule is that the number one antidote to skepticism is transparency. It's time to test your limits for sharing data on issues that matter to your audience, such as sustainability progress, employee compensation, or AI and data policies. Leaders and companies courageous enough to show their vulnerabilities will gain their employees and consumers' trust. For example, a CEO being transparent on their progress towards commitments was the top way to convince consumers that they are carrying forward on commitments such as reducing carbon footprints or supporting employee well-being. There's one instance where it's particularly hard to garner forgiveness, so transparency early and often on what you're actively doing to remedy this issue is key, chiefly if a company is found underpaying certain staff or neglecting employee well-being. One such example of a brand that successfully protected their brand reputation through radical transparency is a recent post-pandemic merger of two of India's largest cinema brands, PVR and Inox. I'm sure all of you have been there. Although the businesses sought to unite to strengthen the Indian entertainment industry and their balance sheets, the merger news was met initially with suspicion and skepticism in the Indian ecosystem due to concerns about job losses, competition, and cultural clashes. We created The Power of Two, a campaign that would employ extreme candor and transparency to reclaim the merger narrative create positive conversation on expansion plans, and reiterate the benefits of integration across stakeholders. Through media relations, leadership voices, and third-party evangelists, we created a cadence of continuous communication on every detail of the merger, from the share swap ratio and impact on financials to NCLT approvals and deadlines to deal closure. We also debunked misconceptions of a price hike through clever marketing deals tied to key cinema moments and emphasized how the merger would be a game changer for product innovation, pricing, content lineup, with regulatory roundtables and engagement with the national film fraternity. The new brand was rewarded for its transparency, with PVR shares hitting a 52-week high, a CCI complaint being dismissed, and positive sentiment among moviegoers and employees. A particular need for transparency around the impact your actions have on your employees leads nicely into the third rule. Your employee reputation is now synonymous with your corporate reputation. How a brand treats their employees has truly emerged as a top driver of brand purchase and loyalty. Brands need to take care of their people and find relevant ways to tell these stories externally, not just as part of their employee engagement comms. In particular, 65% of Indian respondents identify ensuring employees can have a work-life balance achieved through increasing paid time off and allowing flexible schedules as one of the top actions an employer can take to demonstrate that the employees are their top priority. Finally, our research makes it clear that brands cannot opt out of a conversation around how they're making, using, or considering AI. Enter rule number 4. You need to get real on AI policies, employee impact, ways of working, and plans for innovation. AI is only accelerating in every category, and brands need to confront that reality now, even if they don't have all answers in this constantly evolving arena. There will be a long-term reputation consequence to ignoring it, in particular as it relates to topics like job displacement or privacy and security issues. In turn, companies that are proactively transparent in the use of emerging tech like AI in the workplace will be rewarded with positive reputation, even as they continue to work out the details of governance and ethics. So, ethics and AI, I think that's the key message there. In the end, we know it can be intimidating that audiences are demanding new focus and proven results to a greater extent than ever. But this year's Brands in Motion proves it's never too late to take concrete actions that will improve your corporate reputation. Bold brands can navigate the rapid motion of global context and customer expectation, not by throwing the rule book out of the window in the chaos, but simply by getting our latest edition. If you don't have it, download it. How will your brands make it brave, make it real, and make it personal, now and in the future? So thank you. Next, we're going to hear firsthand from an incredible leader in the aviation and defense space. Anubhuti has already introduced her, but please join me for a fireside chat with Ashmita Sethi, President and Country Head for Pratt & Whitney. Ashmita, thank you. Great, thank you. We're going to leave some questions for the audience as well, so please think about some questions you may want to answer in a bit. So Ashmita, firstly, thank you so much for being here. Ashmita is one of those rare leaders who've actually been in the comms industry for many years and now heading up an incredible company as country head for India. So Ashmita, let's kick off with your thoughts on the significance of corporate reputation, particularly in industries like aviation, where trust and reliability are critical, they're paramount.
Thank you, Nitin. Thank you, Avian, for inviting me. It's been a great, can everyone hear me? Yeah, okay. So, welcome everyone and thank you for giving me this warm welcome, Nitin. And I was really impressed by your expose on reputation. And I think it's so pertinent and it's so topical, you know. I think some of us are already beginning to think like that. And the ones, you know, who are being initiated, I would encourage all of you to look at, you know, what Nitin said. It's very important. So, your question was on the significance of corporate reputation, and especially in an industry like aviation. So, aviation touches the lives of 8.7 billion passengers annually. Those are the 2023 figures. And that means really that number of passengers depend on us. When you have an engine burning at 1700 degrees centigrade with more than 10,000 parts and 200 passengers, trust and reliability, Nitin, are paramount. Absolutely. Now, I'll give you an example of the Pratt & Whitney F135 fifth generation engine, which is on the F-35 fighter, which is the most advanced fighter in the world, and ours is the most advanced fighter engine in the world today. But it's also the safest fighter engine ever produced. It has more than 1 million flight hours of safe and dependable operation, and it ensures that when pilots complete their missions, they return safely back home every day, every time to their families. I work for Pratt & Whitney. It's a century-old company. Next year, we're going to be 100 years old. So we're always tuned into our mission, our purpose of connecting people, defending freedom, growing economies. Therefore, the reputation of dependable engines is at the core of what we do. The trust we place, the people place in us defines us. We also push the boundaries of science to solve the challenges of the world today. So reputation, our reliability are paramount.
So thanks, Ashmita. So that's interesting. I mean, the industry is quite incredible in that sense, the number of lives or people it touches. The Brands in Motion report also suggests that reputation can be improved with transparency being a key factor, right? With 73% of Indian respondents actually saying that. So how can companies effectively implement better transparency practices to demonstrate their actions and results?
I think, again, I'll take the example of aerospace because it's critical and it shows this really well. We have to ensure where our passengers need to get. Like I mentioned, the pilot. Similarly, an Indian Air Force pilot has to come back safely home to his family. Talking of today, it's not just traditional media that is our stakeholder. I think what we've got to realize that reputation is evolving, it's growing, and a lot of other stakeholders have entered the fray. Employees, like you mentioned, are a very strong reputation builder for us. Beyond traditional practices, we have our stakeholders. Customers, of course, are the first and foremost. And then we have stakeholders like our regulators in the industry, because it's a highly regulated industry. Our industry folks, around us are very important. And today I would say this whole group here, that has gathered is a huge, huge stakeholder. So we've got to touch their hearts. Like you said, leaders have to speak at a human level beyond traditional practices. Leaders have to be real when they're talking, and personal connections matter a lot.
So humanizing the brand more and
Absolutely.
more and more. That's interesting. Ashwina, you've had some great experiences having worked in this industry, whether it was Rolls-Royce, Boeing for a while, and now Pratt & Whitney, and you've also had your share of challenges with Boeing with the 737 MAX, with Pratt & Whitney with the engines, with Rolls-Royce had its own challenges. What advice would you offer to people in this room about safeguarding their clients' reputations amidst industry challenges and potential crises, especially crises that they don't come and go, right? I mean, they've had they stay there for a longer time, like the 737 MAX, for example, continues to be a challenge in terms of reputation management for Boeing, for example.
So I go back to the point I made, for the last couple of questions. And I would say that, when I look at my role, my growth, my, in hindsight, it is then, that I actually jot down the lessons I've learned, from these roles. And, how I've handled communications, how I've handled corporate reputation, and how I've handled crises as well. And I've been in the thick of it, right from Rolls-Royce to Boeing, when the 737 MAX happened, I was exactly there, defending the company. And, I initially, did feel that training, which was the key issue at that time, that led to, the 737 MAX events. Basically, training was something that was not Boeing's core competency, was not Boeing's core business. Boeing is in the, area of making aircraft, and why should it bother about training? And that was the stance I was taking, But clearly, that didn't work, The audience, kept coming back with the blame. And therefore, it was important to understand what your audience was thinking, what your audience was talking about, and then take a stand or take a position or evolve your strategy on what was important at that time. Understand the stakeholder, what did they want from you? And now, we've done a study on it. It comes back to exactly going beyond your role and trying to understand what is the industry thinking, what are the stakeholders thinking, what is it you need to address, being flexible in this VUCA world, being absolutely flexible about changing what you've been thinking about. I would say, learning is a very important aspect of everybody's career growth. And getting into challenges and learning to navigate those challenges, taking up jobs that create a pit at the bottom of your stomach, jobs that you're afraid of, actually helps to grow that learning. So learning is very important. But now, again, the way you described the study, it's very important to also unlearn a lot of things that you've learned before. So that is, I think, I'm again looking at hindsight, and I would say, speaking from the heart. So I had to unlearn that this was a training issue, It was not, that's how, the world didn't think like that. It was a training issue. It was something entirely different, and you have to hold yourself accountable. When you're at the top, you have to hold yourself accountable, whatever comes, So just understanding that and evolving your strategies around that is very important. Another thing is, of course, the traditional and the more, what we've already learned in our communication strategies is that focus on the positives. It's important during time of crises to focus on the positives. At Pratt & Whitney, we are investing hugely in India at the moment. We are, in the last 3 years, been on a roll. We brought in $55 million to source engine parts out of India. These are aspirational sectors that India is looking at, making engine parts in India. So focus on the positives. We're going to increase our supply chain spend to $150 million annually, not one package, but annually. As a part of the RTX companies, Collins Aerospace, Pratt & Whitney, and Raytheon, we are the largest aerospace and defense company in India now with 6,000 employees. We are exporting close to $500 million out of India every year out of India. So it's about focusing on those positives. So my communications leader, who is here, Aniruddha Chakravarti, ensures that every milestone, every positive development is celebrated, is publicized. We just opened our digital center 2 weeks back. We, talked about that and got a lot of good positive coverage. So we are committed to India. We are committed to our customers. We are going to find the resolution to accelerated inspections, which we are doing. And that is clearly, explaining to the audience that these are accelerated inspections at a time when the world's supply chain is in shambles. Taking it back after COVID, getting that supply chain back to an even keel is going to take time. So making our stakeholders understand that that is going to take time. The issue is not technical, but something that's related to supply chain. And of course, focusing on the positives, very important.
Thanks, Ashmita. I have more questions, but if anybody has a question, please do. We'll keep interplaying that. Okay. The young lady in the middle.
Hi, my name's Pooja, and we all know that Gen AI comes with its own set of challenges. So how can we, as communication professionals, future-proof our strategy, to make sure that we don't, face a situation? Yeah.
Yeah, the world is changing, and the future millennials are, colleagues, our employees, and the generations we are looking at, our public is going to be very different from what we had traditionally. So it's all these things we talked about, being human, it's okay to be a leader and be vulnerable. It's important, You had recently Dave Calhoun actually come on come on video and cry in front of people. So it's okay to be human and vulnerable. I think that is more appreciated by the current generation now. And, they resonate with you more if you're talking to them at a natural human level versus just giving them prescriptive theoretical advice on how to do things. I think that's very important.
I agree. We had the Zerodha founder talking about his stroke 2 days back, I think. So yeah, it's about connecting at that emotional level. Anybody else has a question at this time? Anoop.
The question is actually maybe related to a few of the people sitting around here. You're one of the few ones who have been in the corporate communication and reputation management role, who has taken the leadership role. So in your case, you understand the nuances of reputation and platforms like this, Spectra, which is giving an opportunity for everybody to discuss on reputation. But from the CEO level, what Nitin presented on the data was all fancy. But how much does the CEO level actually relate to reputation? And particularly in organizations like yours, which is very B2B. Today, like if you ask Pratt and Whitney, people will say, no, I'm not bothered. I'm more bothered about a SpiceJet or Indigo. They don't realize that the Boeing or the Airbus is there. So the question, very specific, is it your experience of working in the reputation management role which is helping? Or are the CEOs really just thinking about it or just going on podcast and giving this gyan?
No, very, very good question, And obviously, I come from that background, so, I realize, I not only realize, I advocate it very, very strongly, for every communications manager, for every reputation manager. I think it's very important. Your function is as important as manufacturing, is as important as the finance function. It's equally important, not equally, even more sometimes I feel, because reputation is hugely important. And that's what I'm sort of inculcating in my team as well. The team, my communications manager sits on my leadership table and contributes to a financial decision, contributes sometimes to, a leadership decision we take on how to handle several other things. So I think it's very important. Having a seat on the leadership table is very important for every communications professional. And look at Mr. Modi, It's all about reputation. It's your success. It all depends on your reputation and what you think. So I think it's a very important factor, and we shouldn't put communications into a separate bucket at all. It should be part of our leadership board. I would even say, companies on the board clearly need to have a communications professional, from their companies on the board. It's very important.
Thanks, Ashmita. That was a question, my last question, but you asked it before. But I will extend that question a little bit, Ashmita, because you're from the corporate reputation background, because you've seen it up front, and in the case of Boeing, you managed it up front. So therefore, you understand the importance, or you know that it's critical. But do your peers, as CXOs now, not only in your industry, but other industry that you interact with, do they see reputation as number one, as one of the core priorities? I won't say number one, but as one of the core priorities for them as well, or not? Or is that going up in their priority list?
So I'm in a good I would say in a good company, that realizes the importance of communications and reputations hugely. So we work together, with our legal team. The reputation team works very closely with the legal team as well in our company. So therefore, obviously, it's given importance. They do have a presentation at every leadership offsite, so they are given importance. But I would say in India, we still have a long way to go for, people to understand how important reputation is. And then I would, come back to all of us here. It really matters on each one of us, each one individual here. How you build your portfolio, how you build your own reputation within the industry, within your company. What is the value you bring? Measure it in numbers. Don't, just measure it in qualitative aspects. It's very important to get quantitative if you want to be part of the operations and to be part of the company. For instance, if you've got a huge page of positive article in the newspaper, which, what does a front page ad in the Times of India cost right now? Can you compare that with the kind of coverage you have got? It's important to monetize what you're doing, and that'll help a long way in making sure that corporate reputation, reputation managers and communicators get their seat on the table, and your companies realize the importance and the value add you bring to the company.
Great, thanks, Ashmita. And just to add, Anup, the data is not just fancy, but it's real. 15,000 people, and Arun, I don't know if he's here, but he is. And the Eco-Provoke study that we did also said corporate reputation was one of the top priorities for CEOs at this time, or CCOs. Sorry, there was a question.
I did answer that.
Yeah.
I did say that we do have a long way to go, and then it comes down to all of us, how we make it happen.
We want it to be fancy.
Yeah, sorry. Question at the back, yes. Can we have a mic here?
Thank you. Hi, my name is Rahul. My question for you is, you're uniquely positioned in a sense, having been sort of in a comms role, marketing role, and now heading this company. There is this increasingly, there's a lot of pressure on leaders such as yourselves to communicate. Where do you draw the line between effective communications and over-communicating? Thank you.
Good question.
Yeah, you have to inform your stakeholders. In an industry like ours, which is highly regulated, you have to make sure you're engaging with your stakeholders like the regulators all the time and being transparent, what we've been talking about, that is necessary. Otherwise, a lot of things can get misconstrued in the environment right now. Your customers are your first, I would say your first and foremost stakeholders who you have to communicate to, because they get impacted the most by, what you might have to tell them. So these 3 buckets, I would say, are essential communications you have to make sure. It's very important to get your message across to the public, because that is going to be your future influencer, your communications advocate, or is going to bring you down. When it's not essential communication, and that media sometimes needs to understand, is when you have confidentiality obligations with your customers in their commercial terms. When you are in a court of law, it's very important. A matter is sub judice. You have to follow the rules of contained communications, and you cannot be talking about those things outside of those areas. So that is where you have to draw the line, and you have to explain that these are confidentiality obligations. These are the rules of business. Media need to understand.
Absolutely. One last question to the young lady here.
Hi, my name is Smriti and I'm from CRY, Child Rights in You. I would like to understand that what kind of role does a cause-related marketing campaign plays in impacting a brand's image in consumers' mind?
Very important, I think, Smriti. It's very important. Again, in the aviation industry, I would say sustainability is a major thing, because it's impacting the world. Climate change, it's impacting climate change. So if we are not going to contribute to that, our industry is going to not be there by 2050 if we don't contribute to it. Although we are only a very small percentage, just 2% of the carbon emissions created right now come from aircraft emissions or engine emissions. And we are technologically, upping up our game. Our engines are being designed technically to be able to handle any fuel that is 100% SAF or hydrogen. So our engines can work on any of those things. It's very important to build that connection that we are working towards the, it's not so esoteric as good of mankind, and you're talking about, what was the term you used? Something bashing or washing.
Purpose washing.
Purpose
yes.
washing. Yeah, you don't have to do purpose washing. You have to create a distinction there and clearly be very authentic, as to how much you want to contribute to that cause. And it's very important. You have to, I think a campaign in that direction is very important, a cause-led campaign. And I think the new millennial generation is going to be very, very cognizant of that. Otherwise, we are close to facing extinction, I would say. I really believe we have to look at these causes very, very strongly.
Great. Thank you. We don't have more time for questions, but I will ask one last question. Anubhuti, sorry, just one last. One piece of advice for this group of communicators, because you do come from that background, and we haven't had too many, very rare to see communication leaders stepping up to be country leaders of large companies like Pratt & Whitney. So any word of advice on what this group of people should do to be successful in their careers?
Yeah, I think I did mention a little bit of it during the course of our conversation. And I think the lessons I have learned, I did not know that I was, heading in this direction at all. It happened, but it wasn't preordained, I would also say, because now when I look back. So what were the things that I really can serve to you on a table and you can take advice from it? I would say the first thing was that I was naturally inclined to take on very challenging roles. Wherever there was a problem, that was the area I thought, I would get into. And it did give me heartaches. It did create a pit at the bottom of my stomach. I was afraid of the job initially, you know, how would I handle it? But I've realized that, you know, if you get deep into it, if you're authentic and you want to learn, because by taking on a challenging role, you learn the most, you know. And it's all about stretch, 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 getting out of your comfort zone, and that's the job you learn most from when you take on a challenging role. So be open to challenges, you know, I would advise, and get into those kind of roles. And as you learn, you know, the other rules of learning come in, and that's, I think, very important.
Thank you, Ashmita. So take on more challenging roles. Okay, thank you so much for being a wonderful guest here at Spectra, and thank you for attending.
Thank you so much, everyone, for having me today, and thank you, Nitin, for giving me that opportunity. And please feel free to reach out to me, you know, anytime.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ashmita and Nitin, for this insightful chat today, and for your time as well, Ashmita. May I request Nitin to present Ashmita with a Sparkle gift card? We hope all of you are tweeting your learnings using the hashtag #RTSpectra. Remember, there are prizes to be won for the one with the highest and the second highest tweets.